welcome our moderator, Vice Chairman of Eurasia Group, Gerald Butts, and his panelists, Minister of Trade and Industry of the Republic of Singapore, Gan Kim Yong, CEO of Engie, Catherine MacGregor, Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment of Australia, the Honorable Dan Tehan, and CEO of Envision Group, Lei Zhang.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone. We are on this panel keenly aware that other than Justin's plenary after us, we are the only thing standing between you and your refreshment of choice. So we hope to make this a lively and interesting panel. We had a good discussion in the green room where I learned to my relief and caused me some happiness that there are a lot of optimists on this panel. So we've heard a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of bad news about the climate, and certainly as a Canadian, I feel obliged to say I'm thinking about people back home in British Columbia. Mark Wiseman and I were talking about the horrific pictures you're seeing of the infrastructure damage from the flooding in British Columbia. So if there's anybody awake at 2 o'clock in the morning in BC, we're all thinking of you here. Our topic today is, will technology save the world in a warming planet? And it's obviously a bit of an overstatement, but I'd like to start by getting from each of you, why should we be optimistic? What is the best news going on in the technology sphere when it comes to climate change? Minister.
Thank you. I think one of the most important good news is that I think the world is becoming aware of the challenges of sustainability. And this is particularly so with the experience of COVID-19. Many of us were struck by the pandemic, and we have suffered a significant impact, not just in the economy, but also the way we live. And therefore, sustainability became a very important factor in our economy as well in our lives. So I think this awareness is a cause for optimism. Of course, the road to the solution is still going to be a long one. I think it is important for us to find a way to work together. All the stakeholders, all the countries must come together because this is a global problem and it requires a global solution. And the outcome of COP26, while it gives some sense of optimism, while it is not as much as we hoped to achieve, but I think there is signs of progress. I'm confident that if we continue to work together, we will be able to find a solution going forward, whether it is through technology or through collaboration or through cutting back on our consumption and wastage. I think there are many opportunities for us to work together. I think for Singapore and Australia, for example, we have many collaboration on sustainability, and we are discussing green economy agreement, explore opportunities. And in a way, in time to come, I think sustainability is not just a burden, it's something that we need to do, but I hope that we can embrace sustainability so that it becomes something that we really want to do. And I am confident and optimistic that the younger generation particularly are beginning to change their demand and their needs, and they are looking at sustainability as something that they want to have. And in their consumption pattern, they are also beginning to choose in an informed way, to choose more sustainable products, services and products that are produced in a sustainable way. So I think this gives a hope that over time, I think the companies, the businesses, and the people will come along to recognize and embrace sustainability as part of our way of life.
Thank you, Minister. And I should point out that the Minister, as well as having a very serious portfolio within the government, is also coordinating the COVID response for Singapore. So you have probably been one of the busiest people on the planet over the last year, so thank you for
all of us are very busy.
Catherine, you're running one of the most interesting and important companies for the energy transition in Europe. You come from the conventional energy background. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your own personal journey through this space and where you're taking Engie.
Yeah, so it's really a very exciting time to be in the energy space, where we are going through this transformation at Engie. We are going full speed into renewable arena, so we are very excited about obviously the dropping cost of the technology of renewables, which is making it so attractive to supply to many of our customers. Of course, the issue with renewables is that it remains intermittent. And so, moving to now the technology gap that we have to bridge, which I'm very excited about, is the ability to offer to customers 100% renewable energy offers. And it sounds simple. It's not. If you're in Europe, sometimes you have wind, sometimes you have solar, rarely both, and at night, definitely very complicated from the solar standpoint. So here, it's the ability, and Engie has that expertise, which we are very proud, is this ability to package and offer green PPAs on a 24 hours, 7 days basis to our customers. And we have just signed a one-in-a-kind of such offer with Google in Germany that allows them to be guaranteed that every time that they consume energy, it is indeed from renewable sources. And that's very exciting. It takes, obviously, you need to have the assets, so you need to have producing assets, but that's not enough. You need to have a green energy portfolio. You need to have energy management systems to enable you to provide these solutions. So that's extremely exciting.
And that, of course, all has a technological backbone to it.
Absolutely. A lot of smartness, a lot of intelligence. In fact, I think you might be commenting on some of your solutions as well at Envision, but a lot of smarts. It's not just, solar panels and wind, where there is technology, but it's the ability to integrate and then to source the right supply at the right time, so that 24 hours, 7 days a week, our customers get renewable energy. And that's very exciting because it's a bit, counterintuitive.
Absolutely. And we've heard on many of the other panels, not just about climate change, but other areas we've covered during the forum, the need for public and private sector cooperation. And I think it's great that we have two ministers from important governments, along with two very successful and important corporate leaders. So, Minister, tell us a little bit about what's happening in Australia and how you feel about the pace of the energy transition in Australia.
First of all, can I just say how great it is to be here and to be here in person on stage with these wonderful presenters and your good self, and also to have an audience. And I commend Bloomberg for putting this on and Singapore for hosting, because the world's getting back to normal again, and we're living and breathing that here at this conference, which is just wonderful. I'm incredibly optimistic that technology will be the key to solving the issues that we're facing with emissions reduction. And you see it on this panel here. You've got two members of government who are at this moment negotiating a green economy agreement. And our chief negotiator will head to Singapore next week to really start firming up that agreement. And it's hopefully an agreement which the rest of the region and maybe the rest of the world will look at and seek to adapt. And the key to it is to make sure that we're sharing the information that's necessary to drive the technological advancement that we'll need to solve for this problem. And the two companies here are also working with the Australian government on doing that. Engie has serious and significant investments in renewable energy in Australia, and we're looking at partnerships around hydrogen, which will be one of the absolute keys going forward. And with Lei Zhang, he is in a joint venture with one of our biggest iron ore producers to see what technology we'll need to drive this transition. And once again, hydrogen is one of the keys to that, and there's a joint venture looking at that. So really in this panel here, you see how we are going to solve for this problem. So I think the future will be bright. I think we'll do to it. I've just been with one of the largest agricultural manufacturing companies in the world. They're also looking for solutions when it comes to land use and when it comes to agriculture. That's 25% of emissions. One of the areas that we don't talk about much, but we have to solve for that as well, get more carbon into the soil. They're doing enormous research and investment, including with the Australian government, on how we solve for that. So definitely technology will get us there, and I'm very confident with the help of this panel that we're at the forefront of helping achieve that.
That's terrific. So, Lei, you run, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only mainland Chinese company that's committed to 100% renewables by the middle of the decade.
Yes.
You're confident you're going to meet that goal, and tell us about it.
For sure. So we even commit by 2028, Envision will be net zero for entire scope 1, 2, 3.
So tell us about the technological advancement that's facilitated that kind of
So, this could be recently Envision come out some invention, which could be interesting for all of us because it solves our own problem. We create the world's first net zero industrial park. So why we do that? Because actually you see there's abundant renewable energy. Cost is lower than fossil fuel, but you need a big transmission grid. Takes time to transfer energy to load center. Now what we can do is we shift our demand, especially, for instance, we create this net zero park in Inner Mongolia. The wind cost is only 1.5 US cents per kilowatt hour. And combined with solar and the seasonal storage and the short-term storage with digital solution, as so Engie offering the 100% renewables. We offer the 100% renewable directly without a grid to the customer, which customer we're starting with ourselves because we're making batteries, consume lots of energy. We calculate if we do not go to net zero, by 2028, that year, we're going to emit 20 million tons CO2 a year. So we found this net zero park is a solution. We're making the cathode and the cathode precursor battery cell. And also we introduce the largest commercial vehicle company in China to making EV with this industrial park. Then interesting is we are 100% green making. At the same time, we're making green products for the society. So this is net zero industrial park. Could happen everywhere. Could happen in Australia. And also could happen in Singapore as well. So you have some island nearby, which could be create a net zero data center, for instance. And it could happen in Spain. So it's a replicable business model.
So I told you, very optimistic group of people here.
We are naturally optimistic. Otherwise, we won't be here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it is indeed.
Just a quick response to Ms. Lee's comment. In fact, we are looking at making our Jurong Island, which is a chemical and petrochemical island, to achieve eventually a net carbon neutral. So we are trying to achieve what you said. We might not be able to do it for the whole of Singapore, but we do intend to have a specific project to see whether we can get there. And we're very happy to discuss with you how you can help us to get there.
I got answer already for you. Jurong Island is always on top of mind because Singapore, the toughest challenge is decarbonize Jurong Island. It's about petrochemical. But today, full of us can create a collaboration. You know why? So Jurong Island could take on the synthetic biology. Now people is able to making the bio-nylon cheaper than petrochemical nylons. So what do you need? You need a green hydrogen come from Australia, convert to green ammonia.
Yes.
And you take the agriculture residue from Southeast Asia. Then Engie could create this project. Envision provide the technology to decarbonize your petrochemical business.
You see, we have solution already.
There's a JV developing.
And that, just to add to that point, that is what we're going to need to do as a globe. We've got to work together. Right. And we've got to use the technology and work together to achieve it. If we all try and solve for it ourselves, it won't work. We've got to use all the collective knowledge that we have, all the collective technology we have, and be prepared to share it if we're going to solve for this. And it's not about putting up barriers to try and get people to act. It's about actually tearing barriers down and getting the type of collaboration that you're hearing from here that will lead to us getting to where we need to in a way that brings us all together rather than divides us.
So it's gotten so positive up here, I feel the need to bring it down a little bit. So we're coming out of an era of technological advancement in communications technology that had a lot of promise at the beginning. I'm old enough to remember when, excuse me, Facebook was going to bring the world together in a way that it never had before. And it strikes me that a lot of the people involved in the clean tech sector are similarly optimistic, shall we say, about the prospects for energy. Is there a point at which we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in this debate, that, in this discussion rather, that we're not seeing the pitfalls, the unintended consequences that we're suffering through from the growth of platforms, for instance? I'm going to have to recalibrate.
Well, first, I must say that while we are optimistic, as I mentioned in my earlier comment, that it's still a very long journey. And there are still obstacles along the way. There may be solutions, and the solutions are not easy to come by. Let's take Singapore as an example. Singapore, in fact, sustainability is something that we know very well from many, many decades ago. When we started the nation building, we have practically zero resources. And we have to ensure that our development, our economic development, social development is done in a sustainable way. We optimize, we economize, we minimize whatever we need to use so that we are able to use the least and do the most. And one example is we recycle our drinking water so that we are less dependent on the imported water. And we also look at how we can conserve our energy, conserve our land, so that we can maximize whatever we have. And so I think sustainability is something that we live by right from the beginning. But of course, with additional challenges of a decarbonization, we need to do a lot more. And for us, we unfortunately do not have abundant supply of renewable energy, and we have a very limited in land. Solar power is something that we have done quite a lot. We have put solar cell on practically every rooftop, and every empty space that you can see, we have put on the solar cell. And we have also started putting solar cells on reservoirs as well as on our seabeds. So these are the things that we try to do to maximize our renewable source of energy. But there's still a limit to how far we can go. There are some technologies that are very promising, whether it's hydrogen or even carbon capture, which will help us to decarbonize. But some of these still have significant technological hurdles. And of course, cost is still a factor. We are also recently talking about importing electricity, green electricity, from as far away as Australia. But as you can imagine, there are enormous challenges in bringing electricity from Australia to Singapore. But never say no, so we continue to try, continue to explore, and hopefully we'll eventually find a solution to sustainability even for Singapore.
Catherine?
Yeah, maybe I will comment a little bit on hydrogen, because there is so much buzz around hydrogen, and particularly green hydrogen. And what we see is that indeed there's going to be some things that are easier than others. So the easier stuff are the stuff that we are doing indeed in Australia with Yara, which is a big manufacturer of fertilizer. And Yara needs hydrogen, today uses hydrogen. It's just gray hydrogen, so very, very carbon intensive hydrogen. So here we have the usage. So what we do with Yara and our partners, we do a green hydrogen production, and it's a drop-in then into Yara existing process. So here you can see how feasible it is. It's a cost issue. We have the help of the Australian government, and we make that project work, and we envisage phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you can see how that's fairly easy to do. Where it gets difficult is when the user of hydrogen has to invest billions of dollars to change their processes. And here you get into, for example, the steel industry, hard to abate sectors, where yes, hydrogen is going to be probably the solution, but for that, they need to invest major dollars, and it's going to take some time before the demand is actually a reality. And so here you're there, you want to produce hydrogen, but the usage is going to be there 5 years later and a few billions euros spent after. So you can see how both calendar and economics here get challenged. And so what's very important for us as potential producers and also infrastructure provider is to really understand the demand. So anything that can help us aggregate that demand is going to be very helpful, and to understand timing and then also the cost curves, and that's really important. So the First Movers Coalition that John Kerry launched at COP26 is a very nice step towards that direction, which is really trying to say, okay, we're going to put the people who's going to need hydrogen or near zero steel or whatever low carbon stuff. We'll put them together. There's going to be some commitment and an agreement that is going to be a bit more expensive, but at least the producers will have some visibility then that we can pass on to the technology provider, whether it's Envision or electrolyzer manufacturer, who also need that visibility in order to get their costs down.
And in your view, how important is carbon pricing as a policy to underpin that entire?
I think carbon pricing is very important. Yeah, very important. And to have a bit of stability and visibility in carbon pricing, yes, really important.
So going to your question, I think it's a very good one, and I think geostrategic challenges will remain while we deal with this issue, and it's something that we'll all have to have in the back of our minds. But if you look at even what's happened in the last 7 days, the way that the US and China were able to come together to be able to say, okay, this is something that we need to deal with together because it is a global challenge, I think does point the way that we should be able to come some of those geostrategic challenges to be able to deal with this. But we can't be completely idealistic and think that that's not in the background and that's something which will be completely put aside. But I think all of us understand that given the global nature, that we will have to work in one way or another in partnership, even though those geostrategic challenges will be there in the background. And that's, I think, all of our hope, that in a way that this is one of those issues that will be able to bring us together rather than to be one where you're seeing competition for geostrategic purposes. So I think there is the ability there of more than any other issue probably for us to be able to bring that together. And look, I agree with what Catherine says. Hydrogen, I think, especially for those that don't want to go down the nuclear road, is very much a key to how we're going to solve for this problem, but it is going to be incredibly challenging. It's very easy to say hydrogen. It's very hard to commercially produce it, especially to be able to export at a price which is going to generate the type of returns and the type of energy that's required at this stage. But it doesn't have to be hydrogen. One of the biggest electricity users in Australia is our aluminium smelters. And one of the smelters in Australia is already looking at how they can use renewable wind plus battery with some backup from coal, and you can use carbon capture and storage utilisation. So basically, we are fairly optimistic in the next 5 to 6 years you could potentially have one of the biggest users of electricity in Australia, which is a green aluminium smelter. Now, we've still got a way to go, but it's something which a decade ago would have seemed completely unrealistic because you need the firming capability. Now, especially with what's happening with battery storage, is not beyond us in maybe about the next 5 to 6 years.
Right. Well, I see we only have 6.5 minutes left, so I'm not going to open a discussion of nuclear, probably to everybody else's happiness on the panel. Lei, I want to get you to share with the audience something you said in the green room there, and that is the proper relationship between the innovative capacity of the private sector and the global macro policy function of multilateral fora like COP26. You said something very provocative backstage that I wonder if you could share with everybody else.
What I want to say is technology will never disappoint us. Although sometimes the government policy could disappoint us. If we compare the Glasgow COP with the Paris COP, not too much difference, to be honest. 5 years passed. But you know what have achieved for the technology side? Renewable energy costs dropped 50%. If you compare 10 years ago with Copenhagen COP, renewable energy dropped 90%. Technology is flying, but only technology is not sufficient. You need to turn technology into the scalable product. Not even scalable product is not sufficient. You need to turn into the iconic project. This chain is complicated, is long. So that's why collaborations and the government policy supports, all kinds of things should happen. So come back to the hydrogen. Do you know, so our friend Andrew Forrest, his ambitious target, how much electrolyzer do you need? He probably need 5 to 10 gigawatt a year to make this hydrogen. But you know, the largest hydrogen output factory maybe is only 0.5 gigawatt a year. Where can we get hydrogen electrolyzer today? We don't have gigafactory for hydrogen electrolyzer.
Right.
So lots of, this industrialization is the key. Technology alone is not sufficient, industrialization.
May I just add a point to Lee? I think I like the optimism, and it is important that we focus and invest in technology and change our industrialization process. But it is also important for us to take a whole-of-nation approach, because it will involve people, users, consumers. You have to change the habit too.
Yes.
Save energy and so on, and don't squander it away. And that is why we roll out, for Singapore, we roll out the Singapore Green Plan 2030, which encapsulates what we have been doing now and what we want to do over the next 10 years up to 2030 to move the people, to mobilize the people along, whether it will involve changing the way we live, changing our, electrifying our motor transport, changing our power generation, decarbonize it, and also changing our industrial processes, like you mentioned. So I think we require a whole-of-nation approach, and we are hoping that as governments, our job is to really mobilize the nation to move in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I can't let this panel end without asking you this question. We so far have been talking about technological innovation and measures that will reduce, hopefully, the rate at which we're emitting greenhouse-causing gases into the atmosphere. But of course, there's already 1 trillion tons of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that have no business being there. And if we wait, depending on the study, it'll take somewhere between 30 to 50 years for them to abate naturally. Is there anything going on in the direct air capture technology sector that gives you confidence that we could achieve some breakthrough at scale that would allow us to do carbon removal at a rate that's commensurate with the problem?
Maybe. Lee?
You know, I have been searching for best carbon capture technology. You know what's my answer? My answer, the best carbon technology, capture knowledge and the storage knowledge is coal. Think about the coal. Every 1 ton of coal is absorbing 2.5 tons CO2 with normal temperature, normal pressure, zero cost, just burning just on your ground. What shall we do is just stop burning coal, which is the best carbon capture technology, which made 400 million years ago. So we just stop burning coal using renewable energy. So
Amen
stop
to that.
burning coal.
Stop burning coal, I think we could almost
so lowest cost
universally
for carbon storage.
So we have a question from the audience here. I think you can all see it. The world will find a technological silver bullet to save us from climate catastrophe. A, no, we need profound economic and cultural change. Well, I'm not going to read the answers. You guys tell me, where are you on the spectrum here? And we'll give the audience a moment to answer the question as well. Catherine.
I mean, definitely B, definitely. Not to forget, we didn't talk too much about it, but the social impact, stakeholders management, social impact, unintended consequences, the cost of the energy transition. This gives us a very narrow path, actually, which we have to be very aware of. And I find sometimes it's even a bigger challenge than the technology.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Someone once said that, I can't remember who this was, but that the energy transition will move at the speed of trust. And there's a lot to be said for that. Ministers?
In fact, I agree that the answer ought to be B, because technology plays a very important part. It allows us to solve a technological issue, but eventually you need to, as I mentioned earlier, we need to move the whole people along. And as a national government, we need to move our nation, and together we need to move the world so that we can come together and to address this problem, not just from a technological point of view, but from a conviction point of view, that we believe in it and we must move towards it in a very, very definitive steps. And I share the optimism with Dan that with COP26, with the collaboration between China and US, it gives us renewed hope that we will be able to move forward in this direction.
Minister?
So, look, I'll give a real politician's answer here and say that I don't think A, B or C quite sum up what we need to do. I think it's a mixture really of B and C. There is no question that technology is the key. That's, I think, without doubt. But it's how we utilise that technology collectively that ultimately is going to decide whether we get to net zero by 2050 or not. That's going to be the key. And that's all up to all of us. Everyone can play their small part. And if we all do that, and technology is able to find the path, I'm confident that we can get there. But it's going to take collective action, and it's going to require all of us leaning into it. But if we do that, I am confident that we can get there. I look at what we've done with vaccines through this pandemic. I mean, we've done what 10 years ago it would have taken 5 to 10 years to develop a vaccine for a coronavirus. And yet we've been able to manage that in the space of 12 months. The research and development that is now going into this area makes what we're able to put into vaccine development pale into insignificance. And it's technology across the board, whether it's trying to capture carbon into soil, which I think has got enormous potential if we can do it right. And we're now starting to see the R&D going to it. Imagine if we didn't subsidise agriculture. Just imagine that for one moment. We stopped subsidising agriculture and we put all that money that goes into those subsidies into R&D to improve land use. That would be an extraordinary change. And even if we can do a little bit of that, by cutting agricultural subsidies, you send emissions down. And also if you put that money then into R&D, into how you can put more carbon into the soil, that's a game changer. Now, it's going to take us a little while to get there, but with that sort of innovation and that sort of approach by governments, I think we can get there. So I can't see one of those absolutely encapsulating where we need to go, but a sort of a mixture of B and C, and I think we get there.
Lei Zhang.
My answer is D.
You make a good politician.
So technology with entrepreneurship and support by government. So today, business is waiting for government policy change, carbon pricing, culture change. But the government is waiting for us. Is how about the technology? Where's the project? Can we get more confidence to modify our policies? So now need is technology already is there, cost is there, but you need entrepreneurship to drive this with bold vision, to take big actions with iconic project. Think about electric vehicle. How can we bring to today? Elon Musk have such a strong vision and commitment. With actually 5-6 years, now the entire EV sectors automotive sector have big change. So I think there are a dozen fields have the opportunity with a Tesla. So green hydrogen, synthetic fuel, digitalization for decarbonization, all this playground, we need entrepreneurship to drive this momentum to kick off with iconic project. Then everything is going to follow.
Excellent. Well, I hope you'll join me in thanking our panelists, and I hope we've made you at least 10% more optimistic about